Hello and welcome to another JK film review. Noah's back from his travels.
Thanks.
In the
Thanks
Alps.
for having me back.
No, pleasure to have you. Today, the Oscar nominations came out, just now, in fact, and as a result, we have decided to do a sort of review of the year in film, with our top 5 films of the year. I think to start with, we should mention a few things that haven't made it onto either of our top 5s.
The near misses.
The near misses, exactly.
I would say about the year, in my opinion, is that it's not been a year with masses of films that have been sensational. There have been a few great ones, obviously, but last year was a really golden year for film, and this hasn't lived up to last year.
But you can't expect each year to be.
No, of course. And last year really did have real depth. As in, when they were...
You had real variety in all the things, all the categories.
When there were 9 nominations for Best Picture last year, and there could have been a lot more. Yeah. And that's a real testament to how great the year was.
Definitely. I'd like to start with The Theory of Everything, which hasn't made my top 5. No. But I'd like to mention it just for the fact that I think Eddie Redmayne delivers one of the most outstanding performances I've ever seen. I mean, the transformation that he goes through there is just... It's nothing short of incredible. Really. Yeah,
I think it's not a fantastic film, but it's a really fantastic performance from him and from Felicity Jones in his supporting role.
It's wonderful to see him as when he's fully healthy, and then watch the deterioration.
Yeah, because it's not wonderful to see.
No. I mean, you know what I mean. It's wonderful to watch the way that there's subtle hints at the deterioration, and
it's a fantastic performance in a slightly disappointing film, I would say. I'd like to mention the film that's got the most Oscar nominations, The Grand Budapest Hotel, which we both saw in a secret cinema format at the start of the year, which was absolutely fantastic. Moonrise Kingdom, Rise Above. I don't think you've seen it.
No, I've seen
Moonrise Kingdom. I think Moonrise Kingdom is a kind of
fantastic,
a more connectable film. You can connect to the characters more in it. Grand Budapest Hotel's more stylistic. This one is slightly more out of the realms of what you can connect to. And
reality.
There's no kind of emotional story connection that you can get from this, whereas in Moonrise Kingdom you could really feel the boy's connections to people and his family and whatever. Grand Budapest Hotel is a great film, but I think it just lacked that slight emotional connection.
Another I would say is Foxcatcher.
Well, it was so impressive, it's got a fantastic screenplay written by Bennett Miller, who also directed it. And the 3 performances are really fantastic. And I didn't go into it with high expectations for I don't know many reasons, but it really impressed me in a lot of ways. I didn't think the one thing that was holding me back from putting it in maybe my top 5 was that it's not consistently quite totally gripping enough for the whole length of the 2 hours and 10 minutes or whatever the run. Really impressed by the depth of the characters.
Really outstanding performances from people you wouldn't necessarily associate with that kind of performance as well.
Mark Ruffalo in particular, I wouldn't have thought was a natural casting for that kind of role. But he's
all
really
3 of them, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, no.
I mean, Channing Tatum obviously makes sense because he's a built guy and
he's making a career for himself.
But he's much more vulnerable than...
Yeah, he's making a career for himself in more serious roles than he was. And Steve Carell is obviously known as a comedy actor, but has done great turns in more serious pictures recently. Yeah. The other couple of things I'd like to mention were Selma, which I saw a couple of weeks ago, which I know you haven't seen yet, which I would say is a really worthwhile film to go and see. Taught me at least about a period of history I didn't know very much about, and has fantastic performances. Really, I think, ridiculously overlooked, particularly David Oyelowo, who's incredible as Martin Luther King, and has great music, and I think it will win Best Song for a song by Common and John Legend. But it's a really incredible, emotional and important, I would say, film. I don't like using that word often because it somehow detracts from the overall meaning of it, but it teaches you a lot about humanity and the ability of people to come together and overcome adversity, which is so necessary in the time.
22 Jump Street. Yeah. A weird, sort of slightly left field one. Sequels can be kind of so disappointing after a film that's... I mean, neither of us saw any of the original series, but to me, 21 Jump Street was so original in its its comedy. But 22 Jump Street retains so much of what 21 Jump Street rather did right, but builds on it, and also sort of takes the piss out of the fact that it's a sequel, which is always refreshing.
And this one was still a refreshing surprise, even though it was a in many ways a copy of the first.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I just would love to mention Ice Cube in that film. I know no one thinks of Ice Cube as a serious actor, but it's just hilarious in that film.
There's a great line.
Utterly hilarious.
There's a great line near the beginning where he works in an ice cube. And
that whole scene is brilliant.
Yeah. In the Lego Movie, which is possibly the biggest snub of the Oscar season in not being nominated one of the 5 best animated picture. It was runaway favourite to win the Oscar and hasn't even been nominated, and is a really funny, really original, and has a message and meaning to it as well about kind of corporations dominating our world in the modern day.
I remember seeing the trailer for it and kind of thinking, oh, it's a bit of a joke.
I mean,
clearly it's something.
No, it's fantastic. And Batman, who is played by Will Arnett, and is one of the funniest characters of the year. If you've seen it, I think he's really hilarious. It's very referential. It refers to so much kind of popular culture and stuff like that, and it's really clever and really funny and really original. I'd recommend seeing it if you haven't already.
I'm going to.
Good. My number 5 is quite an unusual one, maybe, and wouldn't have been picked up by quite a lot of people, but Edge of Tomorrow, which was, I think, one of the most underrated films of the year. I mean, we're bombarded by big action movies.
With Tom Cruise in them.
Almost every week, with some new billion-dollar project coming out, which is hoping to get sequel after sequel. And I think Edge of Tomorrow is really different from that. Or maybe it will have sequel after sequel, but I doubt it. But either way, it's properly funny, quite intelligent in a lot of ways, has a very questionable last 10 minutes. It has great performances from Tom Cruise, which I haven't seen him as good for a while, and Emily Blunt is really great in everything I see her in. I think she's a really fantastic actress.
Really great.
And it's an idea that's obviously been done before in Groundhog Day, and it's kind of Groundhog Day meets Independence Day in a lot of ways. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. What about your first?
My number 5 will be Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance.
The most
I think I got that right. That is silly. That is silly, that bit. But we were talking about Birdman earlier in a lot more detail. And although Birdman so clearly has some kind of problems with what it's actually trying to say and what you're meant to gain from the film, that aside, as a comedy, I think it's absolutely hilarious. And I find anything making sort of fun of actors or the kind of theatre in general really... Although Edward Norton's character is obviously a hyper version of reality, those sort of people do exist, and it is just sort of hilarious.
Yeah. I think the point that I made about it, that you agreed with but still liked it despite that, was the fact that it has this pretension of having grand ideas. And I think you overlooked it and
I think it's because I enjoyed it for what it was.
Enjoyed it for the first hour. Is really funny and really entertaining. It asks to be criticised on quite grandiose terms and has these great ideas about humanity and social media and the ego. I mean, and it pushes these ideas down your throat so much. It's got so little subtlety that it sort of bombards you with a little bit too much and thinks it's a bit more clever than it is. I mean, the way it's filmed and everything is incredible.
I mean, that's the other thing, the one-shot kind of process. I mean, it's just lovely to watch. You go on this kind of journey throughout the film, and you're so used to kind of things stopping and starting with day's break, whatever. But there's such a sense of the 3-day period that it encompasses, and there's a fantastic scene I was telling you about that I particularly liked, where Michael Keaton's reflecting on the evening's performance and says of his play, I just feel like there's a little hammer just tapping away on my balls.
Yeah. No, there are lots of funny lines, but my problem with it was, what does it really amount to? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can understand, but for me, it's there on my top 5 because of the ambition of the project and the comedy that I found from it. Number 4 for you.
My number 4 is Whiplash, which is a really interesting and unusual film that I think almost got into.
It's pretty unique.
Almost got into your top 5. Was there or thereabouts?
It's very unique.
It's got turns of humour, intensity, character. It's got kind of a little bit of everything, and it's a really unique story about drumming and performance and the intensity of being at the highest level of your artistic profession, which is not something I've seen.
That was a really important kind of issue. Like, how far can you be pushed?
Yeah.
Someone who's clearly got so much talent, but how far can you push them to be where they want to be?
Yeah.
And there's that great speech from J.K. Simmons who says...
Who's incredible. And will win the Oscar.
Yeah, well worth an Oscar. Where he's saying, I can't remember the reference, but whoever it is wouldn't be who they were if so-and-so hadn't thrown a symbol at them.
Yeah, across the room.
As in, you need to be pushed to get there. Natural talent will only get you so far.
Yeah, a film that's only maybe slightly bogged down in a quite lengthy last scene, in my opinion.
And quite a weird ending as well.
Yeah, slightly odd, but I think explainable, but it just slightly drawn out. What's your number 4? My
number 4 is The Raid 2.
Which very nearly made mine as well.
Which, if you haven't seen it, I mean, it just sounds ridiculous. But it's one of those films, we were watching it, we were on a train, in fact, while we were watching it, and the amount of times you just go, oh my God, how is that been done?
It's very much a set-piece film.
It's just, the story, okay, a little bit ridiculous. Yeah. In fact, completely ridiculous. Ludicrous, in fact. But it's on my top 5 just for the pure fact that there is nothing like it in 2014. No. In terms of actual, there are action scenes, but there's no two people like fighting in a single room for 15 minutes where you're literally 15 minutes and you're watching them and you're just literally so in awe of the kind of choreography and the way it's filmed. It's outstanding.
What's odd about it is that it's 2.5 hours long. Usually with a 2.5 hour long film, you think it's like a story epic. Oh. It's just fighting.
There's literally probably, in the 2.5 hours, I'd say there's 3 breaks from fights.
Yeah.
Where there's kind of a 5-minute period, which is also, the break is also made up with a kind of mini fight.
Yeah.
Someone getting shot will count as a mini fight for the Raid 2.
No. But it's fantastic.
It's really fantastic. And it's there for me.
Pure enjoyment.
Yeah, pure enjoyment. That's 100%. Number 3, we're getting into the real nitty-gritty. This is going to cause a lot of debate. I know exactly.
My number 3 is Boyhood, which is obviously like one of the most ambitious films of all time, and I'm sure will come up again during this discussion. But it's a fantastic film. Linklater writes kind of such natural dialogue that's so unusual in films now. He makes people seem real, which seems such a easy thing to do until you come to do it, and then it's not nearly. And you watch 80-90% of films, and there'll at least be a couple of lines out of place, and there'll be a couple of lines that don't quite fit. And Linklater, partly by writing and partly by allowing the actors to do what they want and let them grow up over this incredible 12-year period. Not just the children, but the adults change so much over 12 years that beyond recognition, and it's incredible. And quite easily could have been number 2 or number 1 for
Maybe
me.
Should be.
What's your third?
My number 3 is Gone Girl.
Which almost made mine as well.
I'm a massive fan of David Fincher.
Yeah.
For me, it's there because it's just such a kind of insight into how little we know about how much goes on behind each door in a house.
Yeah,
and the world is so big, and there are so many kind of intricate stories that we have no knowledge of whatsoever. But Gone Girl is just a kind of glimpse into what is a messed up relationship. A completely messed up relationship. But it's at the same time terrifyingly real. The tension that Fincher has, just from the moment it starts, there's just the sense that something's wrong.
And Blake's got an Oscar nomination today.
Really.
She's really great.
Really fantastic in that.
Yeah.
Terrifying. Like, really terrifying.
Unsettling, I think.
Yeah.
It stays with you.
Yeah. Like, really kind of... if I was to watch it again, I'd sort of be on edge, knowing what's coming up, thinking, okay. And it's not...
There's one particularly...
Yeah. Gruesome scene,
which really takes you back and stays with you. Like, I can remember, I can picture it exactly.
Exactly.
We were saying today how much you can tell from a film about how long it stays from you. Yeah. Some films are gone the next day, and that scene particularly has really stayed with me since.
And I think there were also so many, I'd never read the book, and there were so many kind of plot turns that I wasn't expecting. And,
keeps you on your feet.
Really keeps you going, and Fincher's such an incredible director.
That's beautiful. That's beautifully shot.
So that's my number 3. Number 2.
I think we've got the same number 2.
We've got the same number 2.
And we've reviewed it in the past.
And we reviewed it. And we loved it.
We loved it. Interstellar.
And it's Interstellar.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great film.
It's outstanding, and I don't think we need to really say any more about it. We've got to.
You can go back.
You can go watch the blog if you haven't seen it, or rewatch it for that matter. Yeah. Number one.
Number one.
Do you want to start?
No, you start. Because
you want me to start?
Yeah, you start.
Okay, for me, this was by far the easiest decision, and it's Boyhood. I know you had it as your number 3, and I was very critical when you told me it was your number 3, because I presumed that it was also going to be your number 1. Over a 12-year period to create such a moving, in fact, epic story.
Epic story just out of human life. It's not out of action.
It's a celebration of it's a celebration of the small moments that we let pass us by without really noticing them. But looking at Boyhood, it really makes you reevaluate everything. I mean, it's made me almost, I'd go as far to say, look at life differently. Outstanding film. I'd say one of the best films I've ever seen. 100%. I was totally in awe of it.
Yeah. And I was in awe of it as well. And it could have been elsewhere in my top 3. I had a slight problem with the boy who plays the main character, who you're not meant to love, but annoyed me slightly. I mean, it's slightly too much as a main character who you're meant to kind of go on a journey with, and I found him slightly too grating to love the film as much as I wanted to, really. It's not I didn't want it.
I mean, you still clearly enjoyed it.
Oh, I loved it, and I'd really like to see it again. Yeah,
it's inspiring, really inspiring. I don't think someone will have to come up with a really damn good new idea to do something as unique as that.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, it kind of felt like all of the ideas of filmmaking have slightly been done already, and then something comes along. Someone
comes along with something. And there's just one other thing I've mentioned, is that I mentioned it to you earlier on, but the Hollywood Roundtable interviews, which if you hadn't seen, I'll put a link in the description. Really interesting. Whenever someone representing Boyhood is on the table, all their peers are clearly so much more interested in talking about Boyhood than anything else. They just want to hear, how did you do this? Like, what was it like working on a film that lasted 12 years?
Fantastic.
That's all I've got to say.
Yeah.
Your number 1.
My number 1 is the film that I enjoyed the most this year, which is Pride, which is just a totally inspiring story about, if you haven't seen it, the lesbian and gay minors support group, not minor support group, that helped to raise money for the miners' strike under Thatcher. And I just found it a really heartwarming, inspiring story. It's a really beautiful film.
Everything about it is very kind of appeals to the British person, and it makes you feel kind of...
Makes you feel proud to be British, which is such a kind of unusual emotion for me anyway.
Yeah.
But I really did, and I've seen it twice. I've seen it again since, and it made me cry again the second time. And I think it's not been seen as much as it should. So I would really recommend going.
No, definitely go out and see Pride.
Even if you don't love it as much as me, you'll still, I think,
learn about a story that neither of us rather knew basically nothing about.
Really nothing about, and it's such an important part of kind of British history. I think even if you don't love it as much as me, you can't come out of that film not having enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's really difficult to.
Yeah, I mean, you're smiling.
You're smiling all the way through. If you had to say one of your most disappointing film,
Imitation Game, easy.
Really,
easy, so easy.
We've done a blog on that.
Watch that.
My most disappointing is the Guardian's best film of the year, which is Under the Skin, which I watched last week, and I felt genuinely sick by the fact that it was
no interest in it.
One of the most dull and self-important film, not self-important, kind of annoying.
Oh, this has been a pleasure to be back. Let us know again what you think were your top films of 2014 and what you're most looking forward to in 2015. Thank you, sir, for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you, everyone.